Hello friends and followers, welcome back to TJ's Modeling Bench. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been a regular viewer here, but you have not yet subscribed, why not? Go ahead and subscribe, click that like button, give me a big old thumbs up. And I had a bit of a concern yesterday, actually. YouTube had emailed me that somehow I had violated one of their community standards, so they shut down my channel. And I had just gone over 900 subscribers. I'm coming up on 2 years with this channel, and I still haven't quite reached 1,000 yet, so I'm hoping that happens pretty soon. Not that it really matters that much, but you know, it would be nice. But I appealed their decision, and luckily 24 hours later I was back up and running, as evidenced by this video. Anyway, I've gotten some work done on the Great Screw Bottom Challenge Nova wagon, which is also going to be my channel shop vehicle. So we're making good progress on that. Doing a little bit of work still on the short track group build, Saturday night short track group build, and as well my USAC Camaro. So I've got multiple things going on, but most of the work in recent days has been on the Nova. So let me flip the camera around and we'll show you what we've got done so far. So I've gone over the Nova 2 wagon and trying to come up with a game plan for what I want to do. And I think these molded in fuel and brake lines that are on here, I'm going to remove those. That's why I've marked them out with black Sharpie. I'm going to remove those and then add my own lines back in, just to give this a little bit more realistic detail from the bottom side. And then, you know, everything will get detail painted, obviously. The muffler side pipe coming out, I'm going to remove that, and then we'll put a piece of either aluminum or brass tubing there in its place, because as it is, there's no real pipe there. It's just kind of a round tubular lump. So we'll take care of that as well. This is our lower engine detail pan. It's just placed in there now, kind of snap fit. I don't have any glue on that. It was just there to give me an idea. And the one thing I noticed is I looked at some online photos of this vehicle, you know, other customized and bone stock. This shows no oil filter down here. So there's your starter, transmission pan, bell housing, oil pan. There's a pulley actually in the front, but in all the photos I saw, there was a oil filter about right here. So we'll have to add that in there as well. Just, you know, adding a little bit of detail to make it just that much better. So I'm going to work on that. And then, so I considered whether or not I'm going to open a door or any doors, all the doors. I'm still a little uncertain about that. I am going to remove the tailgate and have it open. So not an issue with that. That actually should be pretty straightforward, not a big problem at all. The only issue that I'm seeing with trying to open the doors to do the interior, and it's not really an issue, it's just going to create a lot of work, a lot of effort to do it well. So on the door cards, the interior door cards, you can see there's a vertical line here, right? And then the dashboard sits in here. Let me put that in here just so you can get a better idea. Okay, so the dash is in, right? So that vertical line shows up underneath the dash, all right here. And then the other vertical line goes alongside this the seat back. All right, so those would be your opening for the door. So you'd have to cut vertically there and vertically there. And the problem as I see it, and like I said, it's not really a problem, it's just, do I want to go through all this effort? Because this plastic where the door card is very thick. I mean, it's really thick. Now, not all of that is the thickness, so some of this, some of that is the upper framework of the door, the interior sill of it. But still, even over here, this area is pretty thick. So I'm just not sure if I want to make that extra effort. Still undecided. I'll come up with an idea on that for sure here soon. As far as the body, those lines are fairly easy to follow, to trace through. The bottom edge goes right along this trim. Now, one image I did find on the internet was the whole side of the vehicle, on both sides where the windows are, that was all covered in. So there were no windows. In fact, there was no rear door on either side. So it was more like a station wagon delivery van kind of thing, right? So there was only the front doors, the sides were all covered, and it looked good. I don't know if I want to go that route, and it would be really easy because I just have to cut out these pillars and the window post and then fill that whole area in with just a piece of sheet plastic, sheet styrene. Of course, fill it in good and make sure that I don't have any visible lines. I'm still thinking on that one too, but I am going to take off the rear hatch tailgate, and we'll make our own hinges. We might be able to do that in a scale manner so they actually work. So that's where I'm headed at this point. I got this, I think it's a Display, but I'm not positive about that. Anyway, it's got interchangeable chisel tips, and this is the narrowest one. So it makes a great scribe for doing panel lines and things. So much like using the backside of a number 11 blade, which I've done, this one is a little bit stiffer. You can see it's a little bit thicker, and it's obviously it's a steel of some kind. So I actually prefer it over the number 11 blade just because it doesn't seem to want to jump out of the groove as easily. So we're just going over this time after time and slowly getting through the thickness of the plastic. And it's taken a minute or two, but it's not too bad. It actually is going fairly quickly doing it with this tool. Now, you have to be careful. That tip is really, really sharp. You can easily stick it through a finger, which I will probably end up doing before the task is complete. But just be aware of that. Another handy tool I like to use for this is this very fine razor saw. And you can see it's been broken a couple places, but it's still got teeth and it still works. I've got replacement blades, but until I just can't use this one anymore, I'm not going to replace it. But it does fit in these lines very good and can actually make pretty quick work of removing these pieces. And it's probably a little bit safer than using that chisel tip. you're going to have a little bit more warning of when you're almost through using this. So that in itself is probably very helpful. All right. Now it does want to, sometimes it does want to grip while you're trying to actually saw with it. And that's, I don't recall exactly, but it's probably how those chips got busted off of it initially. It kind of bound up in the plastic that I was sawing through, and then, you know, a slight little twist on it in the wrong direction is going to make it pop. But it does do a good job. All right, the tailgate is off. Now we just need to clean up those edges some. Not a big deal. All right. And I will probably sand off the detail there that is the hinges, and we will replace that with some micro scale tubing and make our own hinge. And we'll do it in a way that it should work. All right, so the gap here below the tailgate, that is actually where the tabs on the rear end of our subframe fit into that slot, and then I don't know, probably a bumper fills in the rest of that. So what we'll end up doing more than likely is on each side here, right above where that slot would be. Let me hold this back into position. All right, so roughly like that is where our tailgate sits. And what we'll do is we'll probably drill a small hole into the side that will accept a pin, and then we'll have our hinges that'll flip it down like that. And then we'll have to do some work on the interior of the tailgate to scale it out. And we have also removed the driver's side door. So with the door off, we now need to cut out the driver's side of the interior door panel. I've already started to make those cuts. I laid a piece of tape, the Tamiya tape, along. I showed earlier, there's a line that shows where it would separate on the interior. So I started on this side and then wrapped it around, so I had a line to follow with the razor blade. So I've started with this, and I'm most of the way through with this. I might not really need anything else, but if I do, I'll probably use a number 11 to help widen that up just a little bit. And then we'll score it along the bottom and then just kind of bend it free. Here's where things start to get interesting. So we put our interior into the body, and you can see we've got quite a bit of gap there. But we're going to use the other side that has not been cut for our reference. And you can see how much of a gap we're going to have between the interior panel and the shut door. So that lets us know that when we add this interior door panel, that we're going to have it, you know, opened up like that near the bottom. And we can determine that with a better estimation. I'll tape this interior piece to the exterior door, and we'll fit the door in place and tape it on the outside, and then from underneath we can see how much of a gap we're going to need, and we can measure a piece of plastic that'll fit in there. But I also need to figure out my door hinging, and this one actually looks like it might be easier than the most recent one I did. There's quite a bit of room there to add a hinge. So I don't think this is going to be too hard for that. I still got to do some cleanup sanding on that interior bucket piece. But one thing I also noticed, so I wasn't positive about where the door frame and the door came apart. So looking at it on this side, you can see there's a framework in front of and a framework behind this B pillar. And you would generally assume, or maybe you wouldn't, I don't know, that the B pillar stays with the roof and the body, all right? And that where the framework for the window is, and then underneath that B pillar to the door, that comes away from the B pillar when it's open. And that's probably correct, but by doing what we did, now we have this big open area right here where the interior piece would have been. So when the door's open, we need to have something that is in that space. But we also need the door itself to have something. The door itself needs something to close against when it is shut. So with all that in mind, here's our door card. All right, so it's this way. And we know that this little notched area here at the top is where our wing window sits. So when it's together, it's basically like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away. That's probably about 3/32 of an inch, maybe a millimeter and a half off this end of the door card. So that'll leave a space near this back. And what we'll do is we'll add that thickness of material to the inside here, giving us something for our door to set up against when it's shut. If it doesn't make sense now, maybe it'll make more sense when I show it to you. All right, so that wraps up this week's update. Stay tuned for more. I was going to do a What Did You Buy Wednesday today, but I'm going to hold that until next week because I got a few more things coming in the mail that we're going to talk about when I get them next week. So until we speak again, peace and love.